Welcome to the Good News Bay podcast, where we are making Bay County brighter one conversation at a time. My name is Steve Taylor, and I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. On today's episode of Good News Bay, we have a very special guest. He is a guest we've had before several years ago, but this time he is back. Allan Branch is, not as the entrepreneur, although he is still the entrepreneur and local businessman in Bay County, but he is actually running for mayor of Panama City. And that is coming up in the next month or so. This will launch probably next week sometime, I believe. And so I wanted to get you a chance to tell people who you are and a little bit about you, what your vision is, plans are. For those that don't know, Allan Branch is the owner of History Class Brewing.
Co-owner, yep.
Co-owner, that's important. And the Taco, El Weirdo. I think it would be important, even at this point, because it's like, hey, I'd like to have a hobby like that. I just got to be honest with you. I would not want a hobby like that.
Sure.
Like the idea of hiring and firing and having to deal with people. I mean, I love people, but in that kind of an environment, pleasing them in a restaurant and that's work. Like, that's a lot of work.
They do, but they insulate me from the problem. So great teams know when to bubble up problems to you in leadership, and know when to take care of things. And so for me, it's only about an hour and a half, 2 hours a week, because I have an amazing partner and amazing managers. And so, honestly, it really is. I walk in, so I don't know where the cups are. So I'm pretty hands off.
I think what I'm pointing out is it's a gift you have, but it's also part of your upbringing. Again, part of your story is that you come from a long line of entrepreneurs.
Sure.
In Bay County, people that have never heard or have heard of Tally Ho, Speedy Car Wash,
Jimmy's Drive-In.
Chicken Box is one usually when I hear that one, it's old timers that talk about Chicken Box.
It wasn't around for more than like 30 years, which is still a really long time in the business. But 75 years of branch businesses in Bay County since like 47. My grandfather started the restaurants, but I built software companies. So I grew up in the car wash industry. Parents expanded the car washes to Lynn Haven, Callaway, Back Beach Road. I grew up in that chaos and grew up working at the car washes and seeing employees getting hired and fired, and my parents risking, the money out of our home collateral to build things. And so those were conversations.
Well, so that was the talk at night when you went home. That was and in large part, whereas my dad would talk to me a lot about fishing. Right.
I don't know how to fish.
And about baseball or whatever. Y'all probably talk football and business.
No, not even football. In fact, the busiest day of the week at the car wash is Saturday. So my dad couldn't come to the Saturday stuff. But he would tell us, this is the busiest day. I have to be at the car wash. So
after playing a little bit of D1 football, you began to create software companies.
Software companies. Yeah, so I played football in college at University of Alabama in Birmingham, and kind of stumbled upon the internet when it was a sort of a toy that no one knew what it was.
Right.
And then bounced between the computer science department and the marketing department and the art department, and didn't really fit in anywhere. And I kind of wanted to be an art teacher and football coach. Greg Newberry, my art teacher at Bay High, was an amazing person. My mom was an art teacher at Everett before taking homeschooling us. My little sister ended up being an art teacher actually too. But I wanted to be an art teacher and football coach, and the internet, just building websites is where it started. And then it turned in from building website into building software online, cloud-based computing. And I just found that I was an okay designer of software, an okay programmer, maybe, better at building organizations. I had a partner at the time who's amazing and sort of a big brother to me. And we built a few companies and sold them. And that's where the money to buy properties downtown came from, which is what I'm known for here. That people go, oh, the guy that owns property around Panama City and breweries. That all came from software companies we built, in the early 2000s. Sold them. Still doing that today, and that's really what I do for my living.
I think it's really cool. I've enjoyed getting to know you the last several years. You were married to Anna, and so y'all have created this life together.
We've created a life together, yeah.
She's involved as well with your kids' lives quite a bit. Y'all live downtown.
We do, right behind history class. Don't knock on my door.
So as you and I have talked, that's a fair statement. If
people
you didn't hear that,
people used to
I bet. So that's a good point, because if people are not, when we talked the first time around, you would not create an environment around your back door, front door that you didn't want to live in. And
it's been an interesting path. So the breweries, we started those in 2007. They started the planning in 2017 when we were moving into our home, and there was nothing happening. Well, I mean, I don't want to discount the restaurants that were there at the time. There was not much activity. And
foot traffic was a lot lower for sure.
Oh gosh, yes. And some of the pushback, whenever change happens or change is going to happen, there's a fear, and the fears are logical and normal. And
You mean people don't like change?
people don't like change, and so there was. I remember being told, someone said, if you open a brewery, you're going to ruin the whole place. I was like, this is puppy dogs and strollers and expensive beers. And so there's a fear with that. But, when we moved downtown in 2017, I guess Sarah would have been 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
And so the lens of looking at that is, why would I choose to live downtown with my kids and then make it unsafe for them?
Yeah.
Right. And so, fear is normal. But no, I love downtown. I love Panama City. I lived in St. Andrews. People know me as the downtown guy that owns property downtown. But I grew up in St. Andrews. Is really where I grew up. And I lived in Kings Point for 8 years.
People need to know that.
Yeah, and so people know me as this downtown guy. But we all went R.L. Turner, Rhett Borland, all the same parks everyone wants.
For a while, from the outside, just in the last several years, it looked almost as though you had to be kind of pro downtown or pro St. Andrew.
Right.
That's not the case.
No.
And what I think both sides, and I say sides, it's not sides. That group of business owners, all of whom are trying. And I'm going to just give a shout out to Brad Stevens because he's a friend.
My neighbor growing up.
Well, and I know he's a friend of yours or has become a fan of yours to some extent.
Oh, no. Brad is one of my best friends. I was in his wedding. He was in my wedding.
Well, they're a little closer than I knew.
Yeah, I used to spend night party at his house when I was 12.
Well, if you had pulled the plug in his business over there at Sunjammers and he was losing because of what you're doing downtown, y'all wouldn't probably be as close as you are.
Agreed.
And so I think what we've learned is that as the tide rises, all boats can float, or kayaks, as it were.
Agreed.
So those two parts of the community matter. I also I'm going to kind of thread back in. You got, I want to talk about Bay High for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Rutherford's one of our schools as well, high school-wise, but your children are involved. Well, they're not really children anymore. They're teenagers.
They're teenagers.
And so you've got Sarah and Jimmy, who are both involved at Bay.
At Bay.
Sarah is on the girls' wrestling team.
Girls wrestling is a sport that's exploding. It's cool to be like this strong, tough girl now, and she certainly is. She wrestles 130, and she hurt her knee this year, but at one point she was ranked 10th in the state. And Jimmy wrestles as well as a heavyweight, doing well. His season ended a few weeks ago. And so, we're proud of both of them. And Jimmy's a homeschooler technically, but goes to Bay and he's in the band. So he takes electives. And the school has been super collaborative with us as homeschoolers. But Sarah's officially enrolled at Bay in ACE, and so she goes full time.
I'm trying to paint a picture here so that people know that you live, work, and play in that area. Like that's where you do life. You're not just traveling in to... You've got kids that will be affected by the decisions that you're making.
Sure, I use the same boat ramps that everyone else does, and I go to grocery outlets where I shop. But it's interesting as this small portion of my life. I'm 44, and for about 7 years I've been working on downtown, and for some people that is my identity. But other people know me as the guy that went to Bay High and played football there, and so. But I grew up in St. Andrews next to Brad Stevens on Palmetto Avenue. And so. It's interesting how some people know you for a short. People only know you for a pastor.
That's
right?
true. That's true. They don't recognize me in my fishing glasses and my flip flops.
Sure.
So another piece to this, and when you and I've talked, I found you to be a humble guy, and you do things because it's what you do and it's the right thing to do, and not this has all been kind of awkward for you. But like one of the places that you spend your free time is coaching Glenwood Rattlers. And I bring it up for a couple of reasons. I think it shows your connection to another piece of the Panama City community that's dear to your heart.
I was invited. I thank you. 3 years ago, I was invited to coach the 6-year-olds. And I played football in high school and college. I had no desire. We didn't push any of our kids to do sports. Jimmy didn't do any sports until high school. I'm not a big sports guy. We do play football, but sports is not something we talk about. We talk about businesses. And I was invited to coach and went to the first practice and just got hooked. Because 6-year-olds are not a lot of technique. It's drying tears up and this is your right, this is your left. And coach, my belly hurts. And once one kid goes to the bathroom, they all want to go to the bathroom. It's a lot of that. And I missed how fun and silly the kids were. And it's so much fun. I do bounce between the teams and teach the other teams' offensive line stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mostly help with the 6-year-olds, and it's just they're so funny. They're the funniest kids.
Now, they got a lot of exposure this year. They did pretty well, didn't they?
They did. We went to a national tournament. It was actually held here. I think we were second or third in the nation in that age group.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, they're athletic kids, and they're fun. They're tough, and they're fun to coach. And I'm just glad they're letting me come out there. I'm waiting for them to don't come back. The coaches invite me out there, and they're excited to have me, and the parents are excited to have me, and so I'm just excited to be there.
Well, let's get down to some nuts and bolts. Tell me, you're running for mayor. Why are you running for mayor?
I ask myself that every morning because it's a disruption on a life. This is a whole other path. It's a distraction from my family. It's a distraction from my existing businesses.
Yeah.
You're in the spotlight of scrutiny. A lot of nice things get said about you. A lot of terrible things get said about you. I'm a person, and so it's a really tough path, and it's a lot of apprehension. We talked about that. I said, I'm a lot more apprehensive than I am excited. I'm excited, but I'm apprehensive. And so I've learned that not all cities are clumsy as ours. Ours is kind of clumsy. Not all government's broken. It's just the way government's created.
That's fair.
And but my experiences with our city is I thought as being someone who's building things that a city wants, and other cities try to get me to build breweries there. And so I'm focused on Panama City. I'm putting millions of dollars in Panama City, and it's so hard to open a business. It's so hard to get a permit. It's hard. It's hard for different reasons every time, and new problems. And every project I've had, I felt like giving up on. And every project I had to push through and go to other cities and figure out how they do things and bring those here. And I'm just met with a lot of pushback from staff, and they're well-meaning, but they're not doing enough education from other cities of what to do. And they're kind people, and it's some customer service issues, it's some benchmarking issues with budget. And when we moved downtown, people said, "You should open a restaurant." I said, "No way." But I saw a gap in what we needed. We needed somewhere downtown to meet and have stories told about history, and so we opened history class. There was a gap in what we needed in the community, and I wanted to fill it. And then I see a gap in leadership, what I see, and a gap of scrutiny of how we spend money, and a gap in communications that I want to fill. I want to be able to help the communication department communicate better to citizens. We deserve better. So I want to apply these lenses of entrepreneurship I've learned for 22 years doing it myself to business the best you can, because government's not business. It's like the clumsy cousin to business. But I think it could be better, and I'm ready to challenge it. And I've studied other cities and become friends with mayors in other towns. And all the answers, you don't have to invent things new. You just ask other people.
So we've talked quite a bit, and you've, I think, realized I've tried to prepare for this. And in the middle of it, I've noticed as far as you stating why you have run, one of the inspirations for that you've described is Jenna Halligus.
100%.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
Oh my gosh. I thought entrepreneurs could fix everything. My parents even said, you can change more of City Hall from the outside. And then they sold their car washes, which were on Back Beach Road in Callaway, and started putting money downtown. They said, you got to fix it. This is bad. And so, but Jenna Halligus, without Jenna Halligus, we would have moved away before history class would have even opened. She simply advocated for us as an elected official. She would say things. I was in meetings.
She's a city commissioner.
She's a city commissioner in the ward.
Say that. Yeah,
that would help. And she would go to meetings. I remember specific meetings about trying to get history class open, and she said, listen to Allan about it was grease traps at that one point. She said, he's not trying to ruin the place. He's got all the research from other cities. Let's just copy Miami. Allan's done all the research for us. And so, but there's a common pattern. Greenville had a guy that moved into their downtown when it was still blighted. And he started pointing out all the problems and started trying to fix them. And they said, his name is Courtney. This is what the mayor of Greenville told me. He said, Courtney was treated like a villain at City Hall because Courtney just always had something new. What do you want now, Courtney? What do you want now? And finally, the Knox White got elected. He said, Courtney's not trying to be a pain. He's trying to help us fix the neighborhood. And so I don't want, part of running for mayor is I don't think anyone should have to go through what I have gone through to get permits. I felt if it feels impossible for me, I've got money and time. It's impossible for someone with reasonable expectations. If you have limited time, a little bit limited money, it's going to be impossible to open a business in this town. And it's not going to thrive if I'm the only one and other people can only get through it.
Well, I can just tell you that and I'm not a small business owner.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor, but I talk to a lot of
Yeah.
small business owners, and really, regardless of which municipality, it is a frustration, right?
It is. It's not just one of them. It's all. We all can improve.
Well, I mean, government is made of people, and people are not perfect, and so no government is perfect.
Yeah.
But what you're describing is that there's potential for it to be better if there was some. Perhaps if leadership was different, or at least if there was some openness to change, which I think matters. I think one of the things that I wanted to point out with that is that the idea of teamwork is something that it's a part of who you are. You learn that in football.
Yeah, I would say so.
And so, I've thought about this illustration a little bit more since we talked the first time when you begin to look at an offensive line, which is a position that you played. If I look at priorities that you've described, communication is in that, streamlining processes, efficiencies, and I don't want to overdo this, but if I'm thinking about the offensive line, you've got to have nonverbal and verbal communication with the guys, and you're trying to move the ball down the field.
Sure.
At the end of the day, you've got to eliminate the distractions. You've got to eliminate the things that you've got to together work for a common cause.
Yeah, offensive line is the only position in football that has no stats, 0. And your job is to create lanes of running and passing so someone else can get stats. And so offensive linemen find joy in progress and find joy in other people's success. And really, it's a joyless position unless you have amazing people around you who lift each other up. And so it really is. Offensive linemen have a toughness to them that a lot of people don't understand. And that means you're special. It just means to survive it, you have to become sort of callous to the work. And not seek the spotlight, because in offensive line, there is no spotlight. You're lucky if the quarterback says, I want to thank my offensive line, period. That's it. And so, I'm partially offensive line. This mayoral role is really a quarterback role.
Okay.
And quarterbacks are people who like the spotlight. They seek the spotlight.
I used this image before, and I hope it's okay to use this, and it may not even be a reasonable expectation. I very much respect leaders that have helped us with the Bay County Tax Office in days past.
Yeah, 100%.
But as times have changed and technology's changed, we were very uncertain, I think, somewhere as to how could we as a community handle those efficiencies. But most of us that have been to do anything at the tag office or have gone to Publix to take care of some. I haven't done it at Publix, but I've been told you can.
Sure.
Those technologies and the efficiencies it has run with because of Chuck Perdue and what he's brought to the table has been incredible. And I know it's not an exact 1-to-1 ratio, but things could be more efficient. Am I close?
Correct. I think we're so lucky, one, to have Chuck Perdue that cleaned up that department, because you get in and out and you're like, that's it, I'm done. And they're like, you sure there's nothing else I have to sign? They're like, no, that's it, have a good day. And you're like, wow. And so the model of American government was farmer comes off the field into government and brings the wisdom of the field into government and asks questions and is in a position of servitude. And it costs you money, and it's hard.
Yep.
But Chuck Perdue is the best example we have of how someone of the field, a farmer of the field, can come to government and ask the right questions and push things. And just imagine how much productivity in the community he has saved us. If every one of his customers, thousands of people, save 3 hours a day, that's thousands of hours every day that he saves his community of driving around and picking the kid from school and lost work and upset person and missed wages. And that's hard to realize how much. That is not a position where you create joy. You save people stress.
Well, the neat thing about it is that he's created an atmosphere within, his leadership, he studies leadership.
Yeah.
And within that organization, he loves the employees and the employees love him. He's created a really fun place to work, I think.
Yeah, there's there's a downward spiral and there's an upward spiral. You pay their employees well, they care, customers are nicer, they like their jobs. It's like this weird, it's like this weird up spiraling of happiness where the worst jobs are the ones where the customers are mad and the customers aren't being served well, and it's a downward spiral that direction as well.
So, do you think you could, as quarterback in this role, that you would be able to lead in a way that we don't come to work every day mad at everybody and those things being a distraction? There's been a lot of contentiousness. Do you think you can bring some civility back?
Gosh, I think that's the expectation. And can I do it? We're going to find out, hopefully. I think you can. I think right now we have, okay, I'm not going to go into that. We have great leaders who, even within the leadership of the city commission, we need some leadership there, and reprioritizing customer service. And customer service is just a lens of empathy. And often you just need a reminder of it. When we build customer support departments, a lot of times we'll say, never send an email to a customer answering a question that you wouldn't send to your own mother, right? How would you reply to your mom if she had the same question? You wouldn't be like, she's so stupid. It's a framing of how you have empathy. And it's hard when you're not dealing with them in person. Email is even harder. But customer service, 100% makes everyone's jobs better. One of my this is a silly policy, is every email from a city employee, the signature should have a link to a feedback form. How are we doing? Give us feedback. Good or bad. What should we approve? Or did you have a great review? Let's not, great organizations aren't about punishing employees. It's about celebrating good ones too. And so there's a balance of that, of improving and pointing out places to improve and celebrating people doing good things. And it's achievable. We're not shooting rocket ships to Mars. These are water bills, and these are building permits, and this is event permits, and this is not, other cities have figured this out, and all we have to do is ask questions.
No, I think that's great. When you talk about working together with other people, one of the things that I noticed recently is that you've been talking to a lot of people. Is it fair to say that?
I've been talking to a lot of people.
Okay. One of those groups is a group of young of people that happen to be age-wise or young professionals and in our community. Yeah. And it sounded like that happened because a young fella reached out to you, a young business person.
Yeah.
And said, I got questions and my friends have questions. And so you're like, let's get together.
Yeah, one of my things I've realized recently is, if you've ever watched a Roomba vacuum cleaner get stuck in the corner, that's me. I just kind of bump in the corner and I kind of figure out where I'm at, and I could copy the patterns of, most political campaigns are this. Go meet the most rich and influential people you can. Go beg for their money and their influence. That's typically what you would do in a campaign.
Okay.
And so, but that just feels weird to me, because they always get around to the politicians, and they know they're important, and that's good. But people who don't get connected with are the ones that the city meetings are always going, I wish younger people would show up. And so I had a guy that's been following me on Facebook, and he seemed nice. He's a local real estate agent. He messaged me and said, I said, let's go get coffee. And he's like, what? And he was flabbergasted that I would go have coffee with him. And he had all these questions, and I was from his friends. And I said, do your friends want to meet up and have coffee or beers or something? And we'll talk about city stuff. And he was excited. And so there's this gap that we all live in these bubbles of our friends are kind of our age, and then you kind of lose touch of what the younger people want. I'm 44, my kid's 18, and you want to build a town where 25-year-olds want to be and 30-year-olds want to be, and so you got to ask them questions. And so it might seem counterintuitive to go meet with people that are in their early 20s and ask them what they'd like to see, but that seems logical to me. So I'm just making it up as I go.
No, I think it's good. Yeah. I think it's a signal of wanting to get input from the community. Yeah. You've talked some in the campaign side of it. You've talked about trying to get input sooner in the process as much as you can. Yeah. How do you like? And I'm sitting here as I'm asking you the questions. I'm literally processing it myself. I think you would have had a tough time already.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Well, I think you would have had a tough time as it relates to the changes that you've brought if you weren't already a native son. Does this make sense?
Yeah, there is a little more. People
you're trusted more
because most people are resistant to change. It's naturally resistant to change, and often if the change maker comes from out of town, people go, well, you don't know us.
Right.
And every town has this weird sort of seniority thing of like, well, my family's been here 12 generations, therefore my ideas are better.
Yep.
But it's like, that's
they can't
weird.
do that with you.
And so it's like, well, there's people been here longer too, but it's like, there's no seniority of ideas, but there is trust. The odd trust is like people give me nice, they say nice,
But when you go into history class or when you go into some of these establishments, you've got the history plastered there.
Sure.
Like, you're not just a Bay High guy. Yeah. You love Bay High. You're still invested in Bay High. Yeah. Like, you're invested in this community. You're one of us, and you also want to see the community be all it can.
Right.
Right.
Well, I think everyone has this sort of hesitation when people know. You don't know what their intentions are. Yeah. My intention is to build a place that my great-grandkids want to be. Yeah. Right. So there is the apprehension if someone's new into town. And I met with some guys yesterday, they were all within 2 years of here. And they were like, oh, no one wants to meet with us, and we're new here. And I can understand because you don't know what their intentions are. Are they here just to ruin the place, whatever ruin the place means, or take advantage of our little community or whatever? But if I've known you've been here 3 years or 30 generations, I tend to trust you more because you've been around, unfortunately.
Well, and I think,
but it doesn't mean your ideas, if you're new, are less valuable than if they've been.
No.
That's the point to make.
No.
There's no seniority of ideas.
That's fair. That's a really good statement. I clumsily entered into that with the intention of kind of, if I'm going to ask you, how do you take and respect where we've come from?
Right.
Because there is this resistance to change.
Right.
There's a desire for things to be what they've always been.
Right.
And yet, I think I would say you and I both, you're quite a bit younger than me, but we both celebrate where we've been as a community.
Sure.
But we both recognize that where we have been, there's got to be movement forward for us to continue to experience some of the great things that this community has to offer and become the best we can be.
Sure.
And I think what I'm seeing in you is the ability to bridge that gap in part because you do celebrate the history.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I love stories. I didn't realize how important the stories were.
You do love stories.
And stories don't have to be Gettysburg level stories. They can be, the first black police officer. That's a great story. And there's stories of every school name or bridge name is a story of someone who overcame some adversity.
Yep.
And every town has those. But I think, yeah, it's interesting being a longtime family, one of the longest entrepreneurial families in the whole county. And we were, it's hamburgers and onion rings, milkshakes, and car washes. Branches are not highly educated. There's no doctors in our family. There's no brain surgeons. There's no lawyers.
You're hardworking. You're persistent.
We're just your car washers. Car washers, you're welding on equipment. You're vacuuming people's cars. It's not a glorious job.
So talk to me a little bit about the budgeting stuff.
Yeah.
We were talking some about this idea of benchmarking.
Yeah, I think that's part of one of the campaign points. So it's as a citizen, I look at our budget. So it's our tax dollars. There's $165 million spent in our town the past year, various projects, grants, but the general fund is $65 million. And as I campaign, I'm realizing why campaigns are so generic, because they campaign on the exact same 3 bullet points, which is one of them is always transparency. But what is transparency if you don't understand how the city spends? They can show you all the reports, but if it takes you 40 hours and end up to be a forensic accountant to understand how they spend your money, that's not really transparency. And so me, as someone who builds businesses, I like to know if I'm spending the correct amount of money. And in the restaurant industry, you have things called benchmarks, which are like your top line revenue. You should have 30% labor, no more than 30% labor, no more than 3%. If you take your menu items and divide them by 3, it's how much the food costs. So you have these sort of benchmarks where you know if you're spending too much money or not enough. Cities are hesitant to do that. They're starting to do it now because they want to know. Citizens are starting to demand. We don't know. How do we know if our millage is low or high? How do we know if we have enough police officers or too many? How do we know if our parks are for overspending or not enough parks? You don't know that unless you start asking questions of other cities. And so benchmarking is not just, it's a comparative analysis. That's really what it is. And it's not complicated. Hard to argue against math is the other thing too.
Yep.
But sanity checks of benchmarking will help us understand and communicate to citizens what's going on. And these other cities seem to have other things that we don't have. Why don't we have them? So
no, I think the comparison side is good. I mean, you find somebody that's doing it and doing it well, and then you look at what they're doing and how they're doing and what those percentages are, and that's at least a clue, perhaps. As you look at, I was asking you about the mechanics of it before because I think it matters a lot. Like, this is an election that's going to be in the middle of the year. As soon as the election's over, like if everybody goes to the polls and they vote and they let you be the quarterback, now congratulations, you get to serve, right?
Sure.
But you find yourself elected right in the middle of budget season.
Budget season. Yeah.
Because the budget's not calendar year, so like that's getting ready to. So it's not like, well, we're going to attack this other list of things first. One of the first things to attack is the budget stuff, right?
Yeah, the election cycle currently for these municipal elections is not really synced up smartly with budgeting, because you really come in. They're really working on budgeting right now. You come into the budget presentations, and so what happens is you come in as a new elected official, and you're like, "Wait, what's happening?" And they're like, "And here's the millage," and you're like, "Wait, what?" And then you're locked in on spending for a full year. So as you're getting all these ideas and wanting to change these things, they say, "Sorry, we can budget that for next year."
Yep.
And so it really is bad timing. Well, not conducive to making good decisions right when you get elected. So, I'm already studying our budget, studying other people's budgets. So I'm anticipating winning, although you have to show up and vote. So I want to go into budget season knowing how we should spend money and having ideas there instead of coming in and going, now what's happening? It's a lot of money.
So I know that I'm only going to be able to keep people's attention so long. I could talk to you a lot. I want people to know a couple of things. I want them to know when the election is. Down here it says April 22nd.
That's the election day. Early voting starts April 14th.
Okay.
I'm an early voter is when I always vote. And so, and absentee ballots go out soon. So it's 55 days away, 54 days away.
Well, I'm glad we can let you tell your story here, and I hope it encourages people to get out and vote and to let their voice be heard. And I also want to make note that a lot of your stances, where you stand on a lot of these things, what your plans are, we're going to put the links in the show notes. They can go look for themselves. And
or we'd have a 4-hour podcast.
We would.
Which nobody would watch.
Well, you got a lot of.
My mom would watch.
Well, I would enjoy a lot of it, but then when we get to the hobby side of you and all the numbers and stuff, I'm out. I want to go fishing. So it's been a joy and a privilege, and I appreciate you making Bay County a brighter place, man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We are so grateful for all of our longtime listeners, but we'd also love it if you would like and share it with others so that they too can be encouraged by the content.